do that. And so we'll try to keep this recording available for throughout the season, because you all might want to refer to it if you're starting to work on reach codes. Well, really, I think I already mentioned the purpose of this the presentation here. And I also wanted to mention that we have an outstanding speaker tonight, Diane Bailey. And I don't know how many of you know Diane, but a number of us have known her for a long time, and she is really from my point of view, the go-to person to understand what we need to do around reach codes in this community. And Diane actually also is executive director of the Menlo Spark, which is really Menlo Spark. I don't know where this started, Diane, but it started out as Menlo Spark as a community around working for climate change. But it's transcended that and really takes leadership for all of us, for the communities in the area, and that's thanks to Diane. She also then leads the Fossil-Free Buildings Silicon Valley group, which is really why we're here tonight, to hear about all the work that Fossil-Free Buildings is doing around, the leadership they're going to give us around reach codes. And never fear, we will have our own reach code team, which many of you are aware of now, but we are going to closely collaborate with Fossil-Free Buildings and others along in the process. This is sort of a joint effort. Once we get into really convincing all the communities to make a difference using reach codes and municipal codes, we really all have to coalesce together as a team to work. So it'll be, actually, it's a lot of fun. It's really gratifying to work with all these wonderful people. A little bit about Diane, in addition, is to her current work, is that she did work, Diane, you worked at, am I right, Natural Resources Defense Council, worked in Chicago in an environmental group for a while, and other areas of work. And then she has, this gal is an engineer. She has a chemical engineering degree and an environmental engineering degree. So I think what that does is it brings, from my point of view, it brings us someone who is very, very strategic, very pays attention to the data and makes plans and strategies around the data. So I think with all that, I'm going to hand this over to Diane, and we'll get started learning about reach codes tonight.
Karen, thank you so much for that generous introduction. I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to start a screen share and try to talk to you while I do this, but I'm hoping this can be more of a conversation. I do have slides to go through. Let me put it in slide mode. Is it working? No. Okay. We're going to get there. Okay. Yes, I hope this can be more of a conversation, but I'm going to try to zip through some of these slides quickly about reach codes. I'm going to talk a little bit about other building electrification strategies at the local level. And then I really look forward to kind of digging in and hearing your views and your questions and how we can move some of our local cities to act this year. This is such an important year for action, and we have no time to waste. So just a tiny bit about Menlo Spark. We're a really tiny community climate organization based in Menlo Park, but now working throughout Silicon Valley to accelerate the transition to a zero carbon economy and get off of fossil fuels. We're squarely focused on working with all different stakeholders to phase out fossil fuels. And you guys probably know this, but the news about where we are in climate is not great. You guys are the experts. You probably can recite all of this better than I, but we have very little time to act. And, you know, with recent reports coming out, it's looking more and more like we really need to focus in on short-lived climate pollutants, methane being one of the most important ones. There's so much we can do. And these pollutants are also really polluting our air and harming our health. So, so this, give me 1 second. Okay, now I can see my notes. Okay, so the LAO, that's California's Legislative Analyst Office. They're very conservative. In tandem with the latest IPCC report, they put out their own report about how climate is impacting us in California, how we're already living in a climate change world, and what that really means in dollars and cents and localized impacts. And they had really striking and really sobering analysis that nobody in our state is untouched by climate, and that we're facing billions and billions of dollars in damages to our property, as well as other kind of housing and health impacts. Hundreds of schools getting temporarily closed because of wildfires. We're heading into another wildfire season. We're looking at terrible air quality as a result, and knowing that a lot of Californians will die as a result of hazardous air quality. And we also know that extreme heat is a major killer. It's responsible for hundreds of deaths, on a par with auto accidents. So this is really a serious issue, and we can't talk about it in the future tense because it's here now. Just a few reminders about heat waves. We're feeling it. Wildfires are here on our doorstep. And when we're not experiencing wildfires locally, we are experiencing hazardous air quality. And as I noted, that really is shortening our lives, and thousands of people are dying prematurely from air pollution every year. And there's also a steep cost of inaction. And I think that's really important to remind our decision makers as they talk about the opposition in the community, or worry about the cost of taking action. We're looking at $2 trillion as a hit to our economy as a result of climate impacts. That's each year. I'm not going to read all of these slides, by the way, but these are a little dense because I want the slide deck to be a resource for you all. So one last note on this, just to set up the discussion, is that we know that majority of people are with us and agree that climate change is a pressing problem, and they want local leaders to take action. There's some polling that was done last year by Peninsula Clean Energy, and they're in San Mateo County, but I would expect similar results. And all of the Yale climate communications work, the polling work they do, shows very similar results between San Mateo and Santa Clara County, that majority of folks do support climate action. But I think one of the most important things is that 85% of people want climate action, and really want their local leaders to act and not wait. Obviously, waiting for some federal savior hasn't really worked out too well for us. I don't want to, we shouldn't close that option forever, but right now we can't rely on it. And same for our state, we're falling farther and farther behind. So this is just a look at, what are the sectors contributing most to climate pollution in our state. Buildings account for 27% of the climate inventory, and that's mainly what we're going to talk about here. But our local greenhouse gas inventories look much different. Locally, we have less industry, not none, but less, and that means that building energy use accounts for about 40% or more of our emissions, and there's a big asterisk on the 40%. And that's because the inventories don't even begin to take into consideration methane leakage. And you guys probably already know about this. Gary, I'll let you speak to this when we're done. This is a really important issue. Methane is a climate super pollutant that is 80 times more potent than CO2 if we look at shorter timeframes, like 20 years. And so we really need to start taking it more seriously. So why are so many people talking about electrifying buildings? Obviously, it's a key climate action. We know that. I talked about methane as a super pollutant, but there are a whole host of other factors. Welcome folks who are joining. And we really need to pay attention to the health and safety and other issues related to piping a toxic and explosive gas throughout our homes and buildings. It's not very safe, but here we are with the gas pipe through our buildings. And so what do we do? Well, first of all, we recognize methane as an air pollutant. Burning methane in our homes and buildings produces 7 times more smog-forming NOx pollution than all of the power plants combined, and more NOx and smog-forming pollution than cars and trucks in the Bay Area as well. So this is a major pollution source, and it's right inside our homes. We're breathing it every day. You guys have probably seen in the news a whole lot of studies about the health impacts, and this is a recent one from Stanford where they found that even when your gas stove is off, the gas is leaking all the time in your home 24/7. It's not related to how new or old a gas appliance is. All of our gas appliances leak all the time. And not only that, recent research has speciated the methane gas that we use in our homes. That's just looking at the chemical composition, and found about 21 different hazardous chemicals inside the methane gas. And of course, the industry calls it natural gas, but we all know better that it's not natural at all. It's a fossil fuel. And the 21 toxic chemicals are a little bit of news that these are making it all the way downstream in the pipelines to our homes. One of the most well-known is benzene. So we're breathing in benzene as part of the methane gas mix in our homes. So super problematic. Okay, so now on to what are we going to do about it? Oh, Karen, I think you're in this picture. Some of you, Gary, you're in there too. Good. Okay. So some of us got together back in 2019 and formed a campaign for fossil-free buildings in Silicon Valley. There were a few core people at the start. We are now 38 member groups working together to accelerate a phase out of fossil fuels, especially methane gas from our homes and buildings, all of our homes and buildings throughout Silicon Valley. And we decided as a starting place to focus on REACH codes in 2019. It was kind of a novel strategy. We weren't sure where that would go, but the basic concept of a REACH code, just to level set for everyone, you probably know this, but just a visual of what a REACH code is. It's literally reaching beyond California's state requirements for building energy codes. California has some of the strictest energy efficiency requirements in the world. But those energy codes can also be used to fuel switch to get off of polluting fuels like gas. And this is how it's done, is each municipality always has the option in every 3-year code cycle to go beyond California's base energy codes. They have to be approved by the California Energy Commission. At this point, it's really just a formality. We haven't seen any codes rejected. So where are we in this effort to get REACH codes adopted? Well, in 2019, the city of Berkeley kicked off the process, not with a REACH code, but with a gas ban. It's pretty famous by now. They were hauled into court to fight it by the gas industry, or actually the Restaurant Association, but at the behest of the gas industry. They prevailed in court, of course, as everyone knew they would, because the law is settled that cities do have the authority to ban gas, and cities do have the authority to adopt REACH codes. Some cities politically decided that using the term gas ban was a little divisive and politically a step too far. And so REACH codes became a more popular way to ban gas without saying we're banning gas, but they effectively accomplished the same thing. This map is not perfectly up to date. Now we have 60 policies in California, mostly REACH codes, but also a bunch of gas bans, about 5 or 6 cities, just straight up banning gas. And most of these are in the Bay Area. As you can see, about 14 of them are in Santa Clara County, including the county itself, which is great because it's a nice model. Sorry if you can hear my kids in the background. Okay. So this proved to be a very effective strategy for new construction. And because this is tied to the 3-year code cycle that the state sets, now in 2022, we're having to re-up these REACH codes to sync with the new state codes for all of the cities that didn't adopt a gas ban. Gas bans are permanent. The REACH codes exist for 3 years. So all of those cities with REACH codes, they expire at the end of this year. And that provides a window to adopt new REACH codes that not only require all electric appliances and heating for new construction, but also make a foray into existing buildings. And this is really important because although we were super successful requiring all electric homes and buildings for new construction, our environment is really pretty built out. And so we have to start to make strides on existing buildings and phasing out gas appliances there. So if I have time, I will get into some of the incentives and pilots and some of the ways that community choice energy is supporting these efforts, and then get into some of the actual municipal actions that have been taken so far, as well as the Bay Area Air District requirements that are coming up. We'll see how much time we have. And okay, just a few examples of cities that have tried to get into existing building electrification with their codes. Menlo Park and Half Moon Bay are probably the biggest local examples of cities that tried to do so-called replace on burnout strategies. In Menlo Park, the city has a climate action plan with a zero carbon goal of 2030. It's fairly aggressive, and building decarbonization is one of the key strategies. They're aiming to electrify 95% of homes and buildings by 2030. And so that city will need to get into existing buildings quickly. As I mentioned earlier, the legal authority is clear cut. However, political considerations are a little tougher. So last year, Menlo Spark, we put out a report about what equitable and affordable electrification in the city of Menlo Park could look like. How can we give extra assistance to low-income households? How do we give some assistance to moderate income households? And then for more affluent households, we feel that the current slate of rebates and the market financing available to them is sufficient. What does that look like? We came up with a strategy that looks at reach codes, reach code 2.0, as incorporating existing buildings alongside new construction, meaning that the city would no longer issue permits for new gas appliances. So whether a homeowner is just replacing a broken water heater or planning a larger remodel, the idea is that if a city has a zero carbon climate target, it's really out of step with that target to issue any new permits for fossil fuel appliances, no matter how small. And with that comes a long list of supports that cities should be providing to kind of ease that transition for home and building owners, streamline permitting, 24/7 technical support, and so on. I'll get into some more of those if we have time later. But what happened in Menlo Park is that there were some legal threats that sort of stopped the conversation short. I'm not going to go through every detail, but there were some measures that the city directed staff to develop, but because of a lawsuit over the utility user tax, which would have funded a lot of the measures, a lot of these efforts were kind of stopped cold, and instead the city pivoted to a partnership with a company called Block Power. This is not a reach code. This is a support mechanism for citywide electrification through a third party. It's a little bit off topic, but if we have time, we can get there. Or maybe in the Q&A. Half Moon Bay is the second city that had a really robust public process where they tried really hard with a full electrification ordinance last year to incorporate existing buildings. There was a political outcry. They got extremely close and adopted a comprehensive electrification ordinance in November of last year with existing buildings and so-called replace on burnout. And unfortunately, it failed on the second reading, and there's a lot of politics and drama tied to that. We can get into that later if we want to. But one upshot of this electrification ordinance that did pass earlier this year, they did bring it back, is termination of gas service combined with a reach code for new construction. And that really provides a new model for cities that re-up their new construction reach codes, that they can combine a termination of gas service. And what that means is Half Moon Bay, they decided that, and if folks want to put themselves on mute, they can do that. So Half Moon Bay decided that they wanted to end all gas service to the entire city by 2045. And it gives ample time for homes and businesses to make the necessary change outs that they need. So that's one thing that we would highly recommend cities look at in tandem with the new construction reach codes. So in January of this year, a consortium of groups called BayAreaReachCodes.org, and you can see the logos there. It's Silicon Valley Clean Energy, Peninsula Clean Energy, as well as East Bay Community Energy. They decided to work together to promote model reach codes for all municipalities throughout the region. And this really includes San Jose too, even though San Jose Clean Energy isn't a formal partner, they're certainly collaborating in the effort. So BayAreaReachCodes.org, they provide 3 different tracks of model code. One is the classic reach code for new construction at the left. In the middle is an all-electric municipal code, also known as a gas ban. This is a cleaner way to require all electric new construction. And then on the far right is existing building electrification. And on that, they have a number of options that cities can choose from. And they just released the model codes for this last month. These are new. And so we're all encouraging cities to quickly take a look at these model codes and make decisions about what makes the most sense for their cities. The first of three is building performance standards. These can be kind of complicated. They work best for large commercial. They're typically required for buildings that are 20,000 or 50,000 square feet, so really large buildings. But just by way of example, Brisbane, Chula Vista, Denver, and New York City have these types of building performance standards that ratchet down carbon pollution or air pollution over time. And they suggest it can be complemented with an end of flow, Half Moon Bay style. One thing about the end of flow from Half Moon Bay is that that can be done solo or it can be combined with any other ordinance. Time of permit, which sounds so boring, is really the preferred strategy because it gets at all building types. And it means that anyone pulling a permit, whether it's for a water heater or for a full remodel, would need to go all electric. And some examples of this are Piedmont, Portola Valley, Denver, and Seattle. Vancouver's proposed. None of these are full electrification. These are all somewhat voluntary, but they do provide a little bit of a window into what's possible. And then the third option is to make some requirements at the time of sale when a property transfers owners. And loads of cities have this, but to get a property transfer requirement in a new city is really quite a political battle and only encompasses a few % of properties each year. And so it's a lot of political churn for not a lot of gain. This is just an example from Denver. I'm not going to go through all this, but just to say some of these ordinances are quite complicated. The biggest impact on the Denver ordinance is really on the larger commercial properties, 25,000 square feet and more. And it's a very complicated energy use compliance strategy. So it's not a full electric requirement. One thing about the time of permit ordinances or any of these electrification ordinances where some political leaders might wince at this a little, that it could be costly or difficult. The model codes have actually a lot of exemptions and flexibility built into them, anticipating some of those concerns. And so with the models that are posted on the Bay Area Reach Code site right now, they have a couple of major exemptions for cost feasibility, for affordable housing, and of course for technical and physical infeasibility. That's kind of built into the baseline, but they just highlight that. And then they provide some examples of renter protections to make sure that landlords can't pass the costs on to renters and create a housing crisis. That's really important. And it's not a new issue. It's just to say that a lot of cities have grappled with this, and there are some great examples of code language out there. And the last item to keep in mind is the in lieu fee, that if there's low compliance or difficulty with compliance, cities are always able to charge some fees to make up for the non-compliance, and the funding raised can go to fund lower income electrification projects. BayREN, our regional authority, has a calculator so you can see what your city climate target is and what types of policies are necessary to meet that climate target. For 2030 climate goals, which really the IPCC tells us we need to be aiming for, we really need an all of the above strategy that gets into existing buildings right away. And I don't think we have time today to go through the policy calculator, but the links are provided here if you want more information. So this is just an overview of what I guess I'll just say Menlo Spark for now, but eventually Fossil Free Buildings, the campaign, what we think cities can do this year in a comprehensive building electrification ordinance or a package of REACH code policies. We would like to see cities set a deadline to end the gas distribution, just like Half Moon Bay. We'd like an end to permitting of gas appliances, so requiring all electric upon replacement, whether remodel or small one-off replacement. And then the third thing, of course, is just updating the all-electric REACH code to provide continuity from the last REACH code and maybe closing up some exemptions as well. So if I have a few more minutes, I'm going to do a time check. Okay. I'd love to talk to some of the support programs that go in tandem with these REACH codes, because requiring all electric housing, especially for existing buildings, and It can be costly, it can be challenging. And fortunately, our community choice energy agencies do have a lot of support programs, particularly for low-income homeowners. Both Peninsula Clean Energy and East Bay Community Energy have turnkey electrification programs at no cost to low-income homeowners. The funds are limited. So for example, with PCE's program, they're only able to cover 200 homes all across San Mateo County. But these are great proof of concept. It can dramatically lower the cost of electrification because they're centrally managed. And we hope that these will grow throughout the Bay Area as the programs are proven. And then the CCs also have various funding and financing programs. One of the most important ones is on-bill financing that provides a 0% interest rate for electrification projects. And that's really important because sometimes it can be quite a bit more expensive when you switch from gas to electric on the outset. But if you choose efficient electric devices, you'll save over time. And it's just hard to get over that initial investment going to a heat pump HVAC system, for example. That can cost $5,000 to $10,000 or more than gas. But if you use 0% on-bill financing, you'll have savings on your energy bill over time that sort of erase that initial cost. One thing to keep in mind is we're pushing cities to adopt really ambitious reach codes that get at existing buildings, is that our region, the Bay Area Air District, is setting 0 NOx emission standards for heaters and water heaters that will prevent the sale of new gas appliances at your local retailers like Home Depot. And that's slated to begin in 2027. It's slated for adoption by the end of this year. We hope that will remain in place. And they keep telling us, the Air District staff and board members, that whether it gets adopted by the end of this year, or even if there's a delay, they're really committed to that 2027 start date. So that gives us a 5-year runway to adopt some of these local policies and get people ready so that when water heaters or furnaces go out, that they can be prepared to switch from gas to electric. So for stoves and dryers, those are unfortunately not included in the Bay Area Air District policy, but we think that they will get included in the South Coast policy. That's just the LA area's air district. And they're working on a similar policy. They're just a few years behind. And then the state, that California Air Resources Board is actually working on 0 greenhouse gas emission standards for all appliances. And those could start in around 2030. So that would be a really important backstop. Karen, how am I doing on time? Do I have a few minutes to talk about the public-private partnerships?
Oh, you're doing great. Yes, you do.
Great. Just wanted to talk through a couple of other strategies to provide some support to homeowners and businesses as we try to transition from gas to electric. In Menlo Park, the feeling was that it was too challenging to find contractors, too expensive for some homeowners who needed some electrical work done. And so the city looked at teaming up with a private company to provide electrification services. This is a voluntary program. But the nice thing about the partnership with Block Power, it was adopted in June of this year. It combines citywide electrification with workforce development so that they're scaling new training programs to train up more technicians to actually do these heat pump installations, do the energy analysis for homeowners, and help get these devices installed in more homes. Right now in Silicon Valley, there's some price gouging going on because there aren't enough installers or contractors who are really proficient with heat pumps and electric devices. So just a quick note that Menlo Park's not the first city to do this. Ithaca, New York, announced a partnership with Block Power last fall. And we hope to be one of dozens of cities who do this. Menlo Park is small, but we hope that San Jose and San Francisco will follow soon. We know those conversations are happening. And the one thing that we're looking to demonstrate in Menlo Park with the Block Power partnership is how to make it work in an equitable way and really focusing on disadvantaged communities first. The program is designed to upgrade homes in Bellhaven first. Bellhaven is a bayfront area of Menlo Park that is majority minority, and the average income is, I think, 2 times less than the average for Menlo Park. And there are all sorts of disparities and inequities at the present and historically. The city is very fortunate to have a $4.5 million allocation from the state budget recently to help with, I think that will cover about 200 no-cost home upgrades in Bellhaven with block power. And so that'll allow the program to really quick start and provide heat pumps in a community where there's not a lot of air conditioning and not a lot of ways to cope with the coming heat in August, and also the wildfire smoke that forces people to shut their windows. So we're hopeful to get those deployed quickly and first to seniors who don't have air conditioning. The goal of the program is to ramp up to over 2 years to serve about 1,000 or more homes and buildings per year. And as I noted before, also to ramp up to serve other cities and eventually hopefully be region-wide serving the Bay. And then with the workforce component, there's a partnership with a local nonprofit called Job Train to start targeted job training programs for electricians and installers. And ideally that will be in partnership with some local labor leaders. That's all in its beginning stages and coming together. This is what the block power project looks like on the project-based level in terms of what is offered for home and building owners. It's really a kind of a choose your own adventure program. When you start work with block power, you get to choose whether you want just an HVAC replacement or maybe 1 or 2 appliances, or if you want full home or building electrification services, as well as solar, battery energy storage, maybe some other items like EV charging, and energy efficiency is woven through to try to make sure that everyone's bills either stay the same or go down. And when people don't have air conditioning and they get heat pumps, which provide air conditioning, sometimes the bills can increase. And so in those situations, we're strongly encouraging installation of solar to keep the utility bills low. So here are a couple things that you can do if you're looking at how do you plug in, how do you be part of the electrification movement, and some of you already are. But first and foremost, we have a really tremendous opportunity in 2022 as cities scramble to re-up their existing REACH codes for new construction, to include existing buildings in that, and to include a commitment to end gas flow to that city. And then in terms of staying informed and being a part of the campaign, everyone is warmly welcome to join the campaign for fossil-free buildings. I included a couple of URLs in these slides, some tips to green your own home, and also if you have already electrified your home, to consider being a home ambassador to help your neighbors electrify. And these links might be hard to see, but I will share the slide deck afterwards. And with that, I want to thank you and just note that this is not easy. The work of electrification can be quite challenging. We might be encountering loads of opposition, whether from the gas industry or just even our neighbors expressing some concerns about reliability of the electric grid, and the expense of going electric. We need to work together to overcome the opposition and to show people how much public health will benefit from this transition and how serious the climate crisis is, that we really need to act. And as we're acting, it's really important to keep climate justice and equity at the center of everything we do. Make sure that low-income folks are not left behind in this transition. And with that, I thank you again. This is my contact info. And I really look forward to having a dialogue with you guys and answering your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. I really appreciate this. Definitely I'll send the recording out to everyone and make that available. And it's just your slides are packed full of information, Diane, so thanks for that. I guess we've got people ready for questions already, so I'll just let you go ahead and pose them starting with Bill.
Thanks, Karen, and thank you, Diane. This is an area that's obviously near and dear to all of our hearts. My big question has to do with funding. We're looking at replacing we've already done the hot water heater. We've already replaced our gas dryer. But the big thing in the woods here is our heating and ventilating system. And we're looking at numbers like $10,000 to swap out our gas burner for a heat pump heating and cooling system. And and the last item would be our stovetop, getting some induction. I think we can handle that one, but is there any financial relief available for the common, I'm not a low income guy, okay, so but I'm not a rich guy either. So how do we deal with this? How do we make this transition easier? I live in a community of 4,000 people. I'd love to help, and I have a sustainability club. I'm the president and chair of that. I would love to be able to provide some information to these folks and help them do that conversion. But right now, without any funding, it's going to be a hard sell.
It's tough. Yeah. And the tech rebates ran out, which was like a terrible design from the state. Okay, let me rewind. So Bill, I'm going through this with you. We're trying to get rid of the last gas uses in our home and walk the walk, and the HVAC is the toughest for us because we have a gas furnace that's working fine. It's not old. We have an air conditioner, same, working fine, not old. It's a really tough sell. And there's a lot of kind of not inflation, price gouging from local contractors. We're getting bids that are north of $20,000 and hearing that like, oh, we can, if you just want a new gas furnace, that'll be $5,000. So that's a little problematic, but I would just encourage you to take a lot of bids because there are more reasonably priced contractors out there. We found that Fuse Electric out of San Jose is one of those, but I can share with you the crowdsourced contractor spreadsheet from the Fossil Free Buildings campaign. A lot of folks have shared their experiences and their favorite contractors. We do need rebates to help with the cost on HVAC systems in particular, but for folks who don't have air conditioning and they're replacing a gas furnace, it is a really good deal to install a heat pump because it does provide the cooling and heating from one device. If you're like me and you have AC and a furnace, it's tough for sell. And on that, the 0% on-bill financing will help a lot because it will erase the upfront costs where we know that with the efficient units, not every unit is efficient, so that's something to check on. But with the most efficient heat pump units, the Japanese brands, by the way, are super reliable and much more efficient. You will save money over time on your utility bill and it will erase the upfront costs, but kind of over the lifetime of the equipment. So we know that's a tough sell. Yeah, anything over $10,000, unless your ducts are in terrible shape, I would question that and go back and try to take another bid.
Yeah, we're going to have our ducts evaluated next week. So, I want to do that first before we go out and start getting bids. So San Jose Clean Energy, would they be the ones to talk to for me about the 0 on-bill or 0% on-bill financing?
Yeah, if I don't know who your energy provider is, but yes, and
they are.
I'm not sure they're ready to launch that. I think
Okay.
PCE said they would be this summer. But one thing I want to caution you is, there's this tendency to upsell people. Oh, you need all these efficiency measures and your ducts are leaky and we're just going to scrap them and redo them. If your bills are not really high right now, your ducts are working fine and you don't need them replaced. Our climate's pretty mild.
A good point.
I'll just note that because there's that tendency, and that labor cost is really high. That could be $10,000 right there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's see, Carl.
Hi, Diane. Thanks a lot for the talk. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I had a couple of questions. First, are your slides going to be available? Are you going to have them somewhere?
Yeah, I'll upload them. So it's a Google link and I'll send the Google link.
Great. The other question I had is when things break, it's too late to go out and try to electrify. So this happened to us. We were traveling. Our daughter was staying in our house and the water heater broke. And we would have loved to have gone to a heat pump, but it was just too late. We had no idea that this was going to happen. So do these programs have some way that homeowners can be prepared so they have an idea of what it's going to take to switch, and so they can get whatever is needed in place So they, I mean, at least know that it's possible. So I know in some cases you have to upgrade your electric service, for example, if you're installing an electric stove.
Maybe.
I'm just wondering if that is taken into account.
Yeah, yes, it's tricky. Ideally cities and energy agencies can put in their utility bills, in the mailers or in the communications with customers, a note, an alert to customers to be ready for water heaters to fail once they're 10 years or older, and make those preparations. Personally, I had the electric circuit put in for our water heaters so that I didn't want to be caught where it's like leaking and you can't get an electrician to do that. But for most families, it's hard. It's not front of mind. It's going to take some organizing and outreach effort and education on our part. But, as we talk to our cities about adopting the REACH codes, that is a way to start that conversation with the community. That outreach and community engagement component is key. It's difficult coming from climate advocates. It's more effective coming from the public health department, city officials, the energy agencies. And so we really need to continue lobbying them to do that. That's really their job to get people educated about that and get prepared. Water heaters are the toughest. That's the one where it's like you really don't have wiggle room. If your HVAC goes out, you can use space heaters for a little while. But the one thing I want to note is that contractors will have you believe that you need to upgrade your electric panel for any of these appliances where you switch from gas to electric. That's really not true in almost every case, unless your electric panel is less than 100 amps, which is very uncommon. You can electrify your whole home on a 100 amp panel, and it just has to do with how smart you are, how thoughtful in appliances you choose. And also, if there's too much of a load on your panel, you can use a virtual panel from companies like Span, or you can use load sharing devices that share circuits between uses that are not like, 24/7, you need it. Like you don't want your refrigerator on there, but your dryer, maybe your EV charger, yes, can share a circuit with a load sharing device. So there are strategies to avoid the electric panel upgrade, and it doesn't just save you money, it saves time, because anytime you're upgrading your electrical infrastructure, you need sign off from the utility, and that can take months and months. So I hope that helped, Carl. There's no perfect answer though.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Diane, could you go back, rewind a little bit and just tell us, about the different devices or the company that's a product that allows you to exist on a 100 amp panel? You mentioned it. What was the name of that company?
Yeah, there is a virtual panel by a company called Span, or span.io if you're going to Google it. And I think Schneider Electric is coming out with a similar product shortly, but I'm not sure if it's available yet. The Span panel's out there in use, and it doubles the size of your panel, and it just manages your electrical use. It's like software managing. It's almost like a traffic cop for your electrical use. And in this day and age, you look at your panel and it's like, wow, that's really old school. It's amazing that we don't all have those virtual panels in our homes, but that's definitely the way of the future. Campbell. Oh, Carl, did I cover it? Your hand is still up, but hopefully I covered it.
Oh,
I'm
yes,
move on to
thanks. Sorry.
Campbell. Yeah, no
Yeah.
worries.
Am I up? Yes, I guess I am. So my question is about propane and whether this is covered as well. I've been seeing commercials on television recently about propane as a clean gas. It's not a whole lot cleaner than methane. In fact, it's got more carbon dioxide emissions. Is this covered under these things? It would be mostly applied to rural areas, I assume, but
Yeah, it's not.
Campers and things like that.
No, those are not covered by the state REACH codes. A municipality can choose to cover them through a municipal code. They're not covered in the state energy code. And there's a tricky question about equity there. Like, yeah, for rural areas, people on campers, people with special circumstances, propane is much, much less damaging to the climate than methane. still a fossil fuel, so I'm not going to say it's clean, but
yeah.
really, I think a lot of us are focused on methane just because of the scale of the use.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with propane, it's like, it's for people in areas that aren't typically served by gas. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Is it more, is the leakage information known about propane?
Yes,
I can
yes.
imagine, you know, the
It's-
way it's handled and everything else, it would, there may be even more leakage.
No, there's far less leakage.
Life, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have the extensive pipeline systems of methane where it's leaking from the wellhead to your home, at your meter, in your home. And at the wells themselves, the leaks are enormous. Yeah, so propane is a little bit more contained because it's sold in tanks. So it's not going through that extensive pipeline system.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, one quick note about our pipeline system, it is aging. And we all know that, like, I think most of us witnessed what happened in San Bruno with the pipeline explosion, but the little leaks along the way are happening every day. And so, the big explosions get in the news, but the small leaks happen every day. And as our land subsides, it's putting pressure, especially with sea level rise and a lot of the major pipelines going close to the bay. All of that pressure of sea level rise is, putting even more stress on old pipelines. So, we're in a situation where the network of gas pipelines requires billions and billions of dollars of investment. And it's like, you might as well light money on fire. It's really not a good investment. So anyway, I'm going to get off my soapbox on that, but it's a stranded investment, and the money would be better spent to just electrify the homes and buildings on those lines that are most vulnerable. I think PG&E is looking at that, but far too slowly. Gary, I think you're up next.
Okay, thank you very much. That was really excellent, Diane. I guess a couple of things. I learned a week or so ago that Cupertino, where I live, was upgrading their REACH codes, and at least the initial description was it was basically pretty minor. We have several escape valves, height of the building, whatever. But so I'm looking for ideas on how to say no. Well, just say from on now, we're going to move to end of flow. So it seemed like what you said about the South Coast disallowing the use of gas appliances because of the NOx. That might be a powerful argument that that's the way it's going.
Yeah, well, here in the Bay Area, it's, for HVAC and water heating, that's slated for 2027 through our own air district. So our air district will enact the rules quicker, but they're not as comprehensive because they don't cover stoves and dryers. And, there was an argument and lots of back and forth with their lead counsel at the air district. They just didn't think they had the legal authority. Earth Justice and the UCLA Legal Clinic say they do. But politically, this is where we're at. And, getting retailers to stop selling gas furnaces and gas water heaters will be a huge step. If that's followed shortly by the South Coast and the state prohibiting the sale of the other gas appliances, great. But at least it, in the Bay Area, we'll have, this prohibition covering 9 counties on gas furnaces and water heaters.
Okay. The other thing I have, do you have any experience with people who maintain their gas furnaces while having in parallel a heat pump HVAC system?
Mhm.
That's come up in some discussions, but I don't know if anybody's done it.
Are you talking about keeping a gas furnace as a backup in case a heat pump?
Yeah, basically you can look at it that way, yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad advice from contractors on that. Our climate is super mild. We don't need gas furnaces as a backup to heat pumps. First of all, cold climate heat pumps are now a thing. They're in widespread use. Heat pumps can work at sub-zero temperatures. They do have additional controls, the same way that windmills can work in freezing temperatures. And in Texas, they screwed up because they didn't have the de-icing equipment. So they had those failures, but actually it was more gas plants failing than the windmills. But anyway, it's just to point out that you need the appropriate technology to the climate. It's not that heat pumps can't operate in sub-zero temperatures. And that a lot of contractors love selling hybrid units or telling people, oh, hang on to your gas furnace, I'll service that for you. It's totally unnecessary. And if anyone does it, you know, that's fine. I understand some people might be reticent to adopt new technology. I don't want to criticize individuals for that, but just to say, like, technology wise, it's not really necessary.
Thank you.
Mary.
Hi. So we've already gone through heat pump, HVAC systems. So we have left to do the water heater and the stove. So I'm wondering if there's any help in organizing just citizens to put together bulk purchase orders to get prices down on things like a range, an induction range, something like that. And then second half of my question is if you have any connections with your colleagues in Monterey County. So
Yeah. Okay. So
that
I'll
we can
the
take
second
offline.
one first. I don't have connections in Monterey County, but other good folks on this Zoom probably do.
Okay.
So I'll invite them to comment on that. But in terms of bulk purchasing, that's such an important strategy. And something a lot of us have been almost begging not the air districts, the energy agencies to do. Palo Alto's municipal, the city utility, it's a muni, it looks like they're going to do a large water heater program, a heat pump water heater program, where I think they might be bulk purchasing with private companies like Black Power. That's part of the way that they save money, is that they negotiate deals with wholesalers to get the costs down because they guarantee large numbers of sales. You know, the energy agencies can do it really well, and it's been proven by Sacramento's Muni SMUD. They have a low-income direct install program where they work with just a set number of contractors making installs, and they've negotiated the cost pretty low. Outside of that, there's been a lot of discussion among community leaders about just getting neighbors together to do a bulk purchase.
Right.
That's
Just something like that.
can be a little tricky, but if folks want to take the initiative, great. And then, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh man, I lost it, sorry. So I think just asking your utility to provide the bulk purchasing, and then the 0% on-bill financing would erase some of the cost. There is a nonprofit called Sunwork, and I don't know if you guys have heard of Sunwork. They have
I've heard of them.
good. In the past, they've installed solar, and now they've added heat pump water heaters to kind of their business. And so they will install heat pump water heaters at a pretty good discount.
And I heard that Ream has just announced that they have a 110 version now too, so you don't have to necessarily do the add more service to your panel if that was a barrier, or more electrical work while you're doing that, because one of the barriers I understand has been you need a plumber and an electrician, and they have to work together. And
yeah, I mean, we spent $1,000 just to run a circuit like 20 feet from a panel to the old gas water heater, and now they do have these plug-in versions that can go in a standard outlet, and that is a huge cost savings. Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's only Ream now, but there might be others coming online soon.
Okay,
that's great. I don't know if others can speak to the connections with Monterey Bay or Central Coast. No. Okay.
Well, we do have a CCA, a huge one. It's I think it reaches all the way down to San Luis Obispo now.
Yeah.
So I'll hit them up.
Yeah, and I think the director came from SVCE, so some of you might know him.
Okay.
All right. Moving to Karen.
Yeah, I've got like a couple of really quick questions. I think they're quick. I'm really curious about Black Power, and given that they have sort of workforce development, et cetera, embedded in what they do, how does Black Power interact with the local contractors? Are the local contractors basically thrown out of the mix, or do they somehow collaborate with the local contractors? Did we lose?
I think we temporarily, because
lost her.
Diane's video went black, but maybe.
I'm
Yeah.
here. Yeah, I lost part of what you said. Sorry, I turned my video off because it looks like I might have
no.
internet issues.
Shall I repeat that for you? You want me to?
Would you mind? Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. I'm just curious about how, given Black Power has a pretty broad range of things that they supply, including workforce development, how do they interact with local contractors, or do they basically pull local contractors out of the mix because they have their own folks doing that work? How does that all work?
Yeah, that's a great question. They do vet local contractors and they have their own standards. And so they'll bring online local contractors that meet their standards. And yeah, they've already started to do that in East Bay because they've been working with the city of Oakland and as well as East Bay Community Energy. So they have a group of contractors they work with, but now they're starting to do the same thing in Silicon Valley. Yeah.
Great. And then another thing too, in terms of just how you get, the whole concept of that basically when the permit's pulled is when they verify that you're not installing fossil fuel appliances. How does that work when we know so many people don't pull permits? I mean, is there some kind of, and it could be either the individual themselves or it could be through a contractor. And I know that happens, a fair amount, especially I think it might start happening if people feel that they don't want to, for whatever reason, they want their fossil fuel, they want their natural gas appliance. So, so are there regulations or rules in association with pulling the permit that, that basically incentivize people to not do that in terms of penalties, etc.?
Yeah. That's a really valid concern. Most people don't pull permits unless they're doing a major remodel, and a very small percent do pull the permit. Now, when you work with a larger company like Black Power, they're going to do it by the book and do everything permitted. But for a homeowner on their own, especially doing like a one-off replacement, no, I think 80% or more don't pull permits. And on that, we're going to have to rely on public health officials issuing warnings to people about the dangers of using gas. And if we want a regulatory approach, the city of Davis offers an example of how to dramatically increase compliance, because I think that all of the permits are checked when a home is sold or a building is sold. So at time of sale, if you don't have all the permits for your work done, you're going to pay some hefty penalties. And that has been an effective way to get people to permit the work. It's not without political work to get an ordinance like that. And so that'd be one way to go. But also, if we look at the time of permit requirements as a bridge to prohibitions on the sale of gas appliances, then you can see like, okay, well, some people might not get work permitted, but eventually you won't be able to buy gas products locally, and it'll get tougher and tougher to get your hands on a gas appliance, even if you don't care about the permitting requirements. So that might be another solution.
Right. That's good. I like the regulatory approach because I just feel that in some cases that's going to be necessary, so that makes a lot of sense. Great, thanks.
Yeah, and that compliance policy is part of Bay Run's policy tool calculator, because they build in like how many people are actually complying with the rules. You can change. You can just change the settings to play around with it.
Wow. And just as a side note, and you may have better data than I do, but when I was developing the SVCE course, I did a little research on the leakage percentage for methane. And to your point, it is huge. And I actually looked up, the numbers really varied, but I was getting numbers like 18 to like 40% of the, gas in the pipeline is leaked. The leakage is close to 18 to 40%. I don't know
Whoa.
if you've seen that or not, but that's
I
what I
have-
was finding.
I haven't seen numbers that is like astonishingly high, but I will say that the damage done by raw methane that leaks versus when it gets burned, there's more climate damage from methane that's leaking than from when you burn it and it turns into CO2. So that just to give a little perspective on how much of a super pollutant methane is in the climate world.
Great, thank you, Diane.
Yeah, if we have time for a few more, I see that Marnie and Sean have questions.
Sean, you
Marnie,
go
ahead.
first.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I see your hand was up there first.
I think, oh, really? I think
Yeah.
Sean was up first. Okay, just I have two questions. One is, this one I'm just thinking out loud. Like, I wonder if electrified homes have a premium when they're being resold on the market. I didn't really see that being marketed in, houses, home listings nowadays. So that could be, I don't know if it is, a good thing. Like, that could be an avenue to encourage more people to electrify.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, we have the data to show, there are studies that show, just based on like Zillow and different online data, that the home sales price is higher for homes that have gone electric and are more climate friendly. But when you talk to realtors, they are so averse to that, most of them, not all of them. And yeah, realtors are some of the biggest adversaries of the policies that we're talking about, and they don't really tend to acknowledge the sales premium for going electric, but the data does bear that out. So you're right.
Yeah, I do agree. I think realtors are also such an adversary in water savings, right? Like, all the houses get converted to grass before they are sold. So I wonder if there's a way to, what is a good way for us to reach the realtors and work with them? And you don't have to answer that question, but that has been bugging me because they cause a lot of the problems, right?
I know. Well, one answer is that there are green realtors out there. And so some of them are starting to challenge their peers and talk to their peers. And one of them is Connie, oh my goodness, help me out. Connie with Greentown Los Altos has taken this on in a big way. She's been meeting with different realtor associations, trying to just kind of just have a dialogue. And it's slow going, but I think, if we have more Connies out there to do that heavy lifting, talking peer to peer, that can really help us. And then I know, like in San Mateo County, the Office of Sustainability, they've opened up a formal dialogue, reaching out to realty associations as well.
Okay, great. That's a good name to know. The other questions I have is whether there are any funds for electrification out there that the general public can invest in. I remember there was one and I lost track of it, but it would be great to have those.
Oh yeah. There are like ESG type funds. Is that what you mean?
No, like specifically to help with home electrification or like building electrification. So if we can invest into, this whole idea of Ithaca, New York, having that very innovative financing scheme, that kind of financing, but that money can also come from like private equity funds, or I don't know what they're called, but something like that, where, people like us can contribute 500, 1,000 or whatever that amount that they set up, and we can buy into it. And then that can go into helping, like creating loans for building electrification.
Yeah, Block Power has some funds like that where you can invest. And I think the rate is like 5.5 or 6%. And it's specifically for electrification. I don't know that they've opened it to the public. I think they're working on a new round. They've done rounds in the past, open to investors. And for Menlo Park, we're talking to them about doing a 2-tiered approach where one tier is for investors and then another related one is for philanthropy. And even if like your neighbors want to give, you know, even $20 or $30, no matter how little, just to kind of crowdsource some funding to help low-income homeowners and affordable housing make the switch. Yeah, I wish I had good links for you. If I find them, I'll send them. But I don't know of any active funds right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think we have plenty of time with questions, Diane, because I think, you know, the people still here with us are extremely familiar with what we do. So I think we can keep our business side of the meeting fairly short. So maybe, you know, you probably have like another, you know, eight minutes or so before we switch over.
Thank you. I just see one more hand from Sean, and then I think that covers it.
Yes, thanks, Diane, for being here today. I live in Campbell. I've been working off and on for 8 months to create a climate action plan. We have no climate action plan, and several of the council members, when I talked to them individually on the phone, were definitely greenwashing, as I would say, because it was just trying to, oh, this is not the right time, or pass. Oh, I love working in the environment, but they don't really care about climate change, right? So now we actually finally, even though they put on the priority, I got them to put on the priority thing in January. They said spring of 2023, but I have this sinking suspicion that they're just going to put it off, and then new council members come in, all that junk. You know the deal, Diane. But I've watched Half Moon Bay, which was a awesome November last year, as you know, and that fell by the wayside. My question is, next month, August, I'm supposed to meet with the city planner to get the funds. We're going to get grant money, hopefully, somewhere or another. I'm going to work the next month trying to help them get the money, since they don't seem to care that much on the whole. How do I keep them accountable so that things don't fall through the cracks? Going from policy and saying, all right, here's our climate action plan, to actually enacting it. What advice do you have on that front?
Yeah, that's such an important question, because city leaders will always say it's not a good time, we're busy, we have other emergencies. Well, this is an emergency too, and putting it off only makes it worse. So I would say can you invite city leaders to adopt at least one major climate measure each year? The plan itself is easy. I mean, there are loads of cookie cutter plans out there, and a plan on paper is fine. It's great to have goals, but what matters most is the actual measures that cities adopt. And I do see that pattern of cities saying, oh, we're too busy this year, we'll just do it next year. But it's really important that cities are adopting at least one major climate measure each year, if not more. And putting it off is unacceptable. It's just like telling your kid that you're going to wait to take them to the doctor for their checkup. Like we can't put it off anymore. So maybe a little less emphasis on the plan itself, that it's not worth $50,000 of consulting fees, because there are loads of plans out there. And yeah, it's good to know our emissions inventory and where our emissions are coming from, but at a certain sense, we already know it's coming from vehicles and building energy use and maybe a couple of small industrial things, but we know exactly what measures are needed. And you know, spending 100,000 or even half that to study is kind of a waste of public funds, in my opinion. And maybe getting help from the county would be appropriate, you know, because Santa Clara County, they have they're ramping up with more staff now on sustainability. And I think really that's part of their job, is to support the cities on this.
That's good help, because there's no environmentalist or sustainability person in our city officially. So I appreciate you mentioning the county. That's a great point.
Yeah, sure. Well, good luck. But yeah, if the campaign for fossil-free buildings can help you, we're here for you. We would certainly love to lobby your city to do the REACH code, but if there are other measures that you prioritize first, then focus on those first. Yeah.
So I guess, Diane, I have a couple of, first of all, let me say, Sean, I can get you in touch with the county people, because as Diane is, I'm working with those folks on their roadmap effort and so they do want to coordinate with the communities. So I think they would be probably very willing to engage with you. So I could certainly do that as well. And but I'm curious, Diane, to know a little bit more about on-bill financing, because you mentioned it quite a bit. And I think I heard you say that maybe San Jose was thinking about it, but how challenging is it to get a community to engage in on-bill financing? And what's the process? Is it something that, where does it typically start? And does it have to be approved by the council?
Well, it's something that's offered by the utilities.
Oh,
So like, for example, PG&E has offered it for a long time to businesses and to institutional accounts, but not to homeowners. And so the community choice energy agencies are trying to get together and coordinate programs for homeowners to make it more accessible. And I believe Sonoma Clean Energy has it. PCE is working on it. I think that San Jose Clean Energy is working as well, but I don't know how close they are to launching it. Yeah, I mean, the idea is that you would pay the loan back on, say, if an HVAC system is going to cost 10 or 20,000 and you don't want to pay that up front, you would pay that loan back in monthly installments together with your utility bill. And the utilities have to subsidize that because they're basically carrying the loan for you at no interest rate.
and so that's probably the reason why SC, San Jose Clean Energy hasn't pursued that yet, because they're in a different financial situation. But now I understand, sort of, they would basically have to have the funds available to basically deal with the difference between the zero interest rate to the homeowner and whatever current interest rates are being applied. And I presume that if it's through the CCA, that they would then need to work with a particular financial institution, I presume. Okay.
Yeah, they would have to work with the bank. I think our CCAs have excellent credit ratings. I don't think that's an issue. But yeah, there's an upfront cost to it. I think PCE allocated $2 million. So not huge, a couple $1 million. Pocket change around here, it seems like. I don't know. And the state of California just budgeted $1 billion for building electrification, which is great. 2/3 of that is for low-income turnkey programs, just like the program I mentioned earlier. But so if there's 300,000 left over, 300 million. Oh my God, sorry, math problems. Okay, that's a lot of money to go towards zero interest loans that could be coming available soon. They haven't really articulated how exactly that would be like, who's going to get how much for what purpose. But $1 billion for electrification is a lot, so it's a good start.
Yeah, fantastic. Right. Well, I guess, does anyone else have any other questions or any other thoughts?
I just have a quick question, which you might not be able to answer, if that's okay. As the family's chair, is there, if when you're talking to kids, do you have any outside ways we can help kids guilt their parents into going electric?
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh, good. What do you got?
Yeah, putting some of these items into school newsletters about, having climate reality presentations at the school or the library, having kids speak at city council meetings is like, their testimony is gold. It's like, has the power of 10 adults. When we line up students to speak at council meetings, council members always take notice. They always effusively praise the students, but more important, well, that's important, but also important is that it changes their behavior. It gets votes on city councils when they hear from students an earnest plea that, this is my future in your hands, please do something. I'm not even old enough to vote, but, and I'm at your mercy to make the right decisions. That works pretty well.
Yeah, I've already implemented a couple teenagers into the process, and it definitely got the needle moving in our city.
Awesome. Great. Does anyone else have strategies to work with kids? Myself, okay, so my kids are a little bit allergic to being drafted into like marching or protesting or whatever, or even like if they have to listen to my work calls in the car when I shuttle them, oof, they resent it. How do you do this without burdening your kids? Because like they should just be kids, right? But if anyone has strategies on how to make it fun and positive and not a burden, I would love to hear those ideas.
My
Well-
kids are old enough to tell me when it's a burden, so I just hear them. And then when they say it's a burden, I stop for about a month and I come back to it.
Well, I can say this isn't a strategy like that, but I can say that we've got this great opportunity in our doorstep with the Silicon Valley Youth Group. And I have a feeling we could call on a lot of those youth.
Yeah, she's the one that helped me. Tara's the one that helped me in Campbell, the head of that thing. That's how it got Sergio Lopez to help things move forward.
Good.
Ah,
Yeah.
nice.
Good job.
I also think using art can be helpful.
Mhm.
So my daughter likes to draw, so she doesn't like to speak. So I got her to draw for us, and we put up one of the activities, like a huge mural for coloring on a trifold board, and also like another trifold board she drew. I can send the pictures to you where people can vote on what actions they want to take with their families. I guess kids and families can vote on it. So that's her contribution through art. And then the kids, they kind of like to do some of these activities too.
Mhm.
That's awesome. I love it.
Mhm.
How old are your kids, Diane, out of curiosity, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no worries. 12 and 16.
Yeah, I got 12 and 14. I felt like we were on the same vibe.
Yeah. I mean, my God, they've lost count of how many protests that they've been dragged to, and they're over it. I used to bribe them with candy, and that doesn't work anymore.
I took my daughter to a protest in 2019, and our superintendent told everybody in the district, don't let anybody out for this protest. And they sent my name to everybody in our school district. But guess who's running for school board now, maybe? Maybe this guy.
I love it. Good. Okay, Karen, that's not to hijack your meeting. Sorry.
That's okay. This has been really, really valuable, and I'm hoping that I can take the recording that we've got and even get other people to hopefully watch it and that might over time start getting interested in reach codes. So
Karen,
really,
can I
really
say
great.
one more thing?
Sure.
One tiny thing. Okay. I hope that we can all work together to convince our cities locally to take on the reach codes, not just for new construction. That's mainstream now. That's not really a heavy lift at all. But to incorporate existing buildings in some meaningful way. Not
Right.
trivial things like, oh, if you install an air conditioner, it has to be two-way. Okay, that's helpful, but it's tiny. Going electric for new construction is mainstream, and councils need to hear that and understand we have to do more. And if we're talking about changing our codes, we might as well use that opportunity where we already have to do public outreach and engagement to do more and to get into existing buildings. Thank you so much for letting me stand on my soapbox.
Oh, I mean, this was awesome. And I have a feeling we still have more questions for you because Lisa's hand's up. So did you want to ask a question, Lisa? Maybe not.
Okay.
You did.
Okay.
I guess there she
I
is.
wanted to say that in Milpitas, I think Congressman Rocana is coming through with some federal money to retrofit existing construction. I saw that in a newsletter.
Awesome.
And we did push our council or our climate, our cap update on existing construction. So I think we're going to address that.
Awesome.
Wow.
Rocon is great. Thank
Well,
you so much for having me. You guys know where to find me. You've got my contact info. I'll share the slides.
Absolutely.
Let's
Yeah,
work together.
Yep, just send them off to me and I'll send them on along the way. And I can say this is a kickoff meeting for our chapters reach code group. Like I said, we're gonna all be working with you as well. But this is like a kickoff meeting that was really great because I think we learned a huge amount and also just built this connection. Everybody built a connection with you that we didn't have before. So always great, Diane. You like I said, I consider you one of the leaders of the community in this. And I mean a big community, the Bay Area. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's stay in touch. I'm going to let you guys get back to your regular meeting.
Take care. Thanks.
Have a great night.
For this. You too.
Bye.
You too. Well, guys, I think we don't have a lot of time, but I can say, and then we've got this really small group. We all know what we're doing anyway. But is there any of the chapter leaders, Campbell, Marnie, Deb, is Deb here? It looks like Deb might have left. And Sean, that you want to share anything to this group?
Yeah, I have nothing really pressing, and I have 3 minutes until dinner will be on the table. My wife keeps me to the schedule.
Lucky. My wife left.
Yeah, I want to say that for the August meeting, if you guys have any groups that you know of that would like to hear about transportation update on bikes and Seamless Bay Area, which is partly about trains too, please let me know. I would like to forward our promotion to them.
Great, we'll do.
That because we need to like market the meetings more broadly, I think, so that more people will attend. Because Karen and I and Campbell, we work pretty hard to line up the speakers, and it would be nice to have, and a lot of them are great speakers. It would be nice to have a bigger audience.
Can we invite people that aren't part of the climate reality? Oh, okay. All right.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, I'd be happy to promote it on my Facebook page where I only promote climate issues anyway. So that's fine with me.
That
Yeah,
would be
it's
great.
open to the public, right?
That would be fantastic. Well, I think with this, we're chock full of information here from this meeting. So I'm going to just say thank you all for being with us. Appreciate it. And let the force be with us.
Thanks, you guys. Have a good evening, everybody.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Karen.
You bet.